Hello everyone, and welcome back to Jurassic World Evolution 2. This video is going to be a 5-star park tour of my Northwest USA Challenge Mode Jurassic Difficulty park. So let's look at the challenges that are unique to Northwest USA. We actually get a decent amount of starting cash, but we are limited to general and adventure guests only. So that means no nature and no luxury guests. We only get 3 herbivores, Struthiomimus, Dracorex, and Homalocephalae. So basically this is a carnivore park. However, we have to use those small herbivores as food until we get to 2.5 stars, because that's when the carnivore feeders unlock. We are also limited to only 5 emergency shelters, but as long as the park is laid out a certain way, that's not too big of an issue to deal with.
If I said this to Owen, I wouldn't hear the end of it for weeks. But to you, well, you're doing great.
I'm actually quite glad this popped up to confirm that I actually did reach 5 stars. Like I said, this is my second attempt at recording this, and while I was recording, a couple of dinosaurs died off, so we are at like 4.7 stars right now, I believe. Alright, I've set it to daytime so we can actually see what's going on. I'm going to kind of ignore, I know I can pause the game, but I always feel like that isn't as much fun if the game is just paused. But I'm going to ignore the alerts that come up because the challenge is already completed, it's tour time. So, like we discussed earlier, the most difficult part of this challenge is getting to 2.5 stars without any carnivore feeders. So basically, you've got your 3 chunks of the map, this main piece here, and you've got another pretty large chunk here, and then a much smaller area here. I'm going to show how I got to 2.5 stars by just utilizing this opening area. So here's our entrance. You probably won't need to do this at first, but I eventually, or maybe you will, I guess the entrance counts as an area of like high guest volume, because that's where the guests are coming in. So I had to put a restroom and emergency shelter as well as small amenities near the entrance. This is also where I stuck most of my facility buildings, staff centers, science center, expedition, power station. Alright, here's where things get a little interesting, and this is part 1 of things I might have done a little differently. I have my capture team here, and my paleomedical facility here, and my first monorail right here. I think it would have been better to put the monorail here, because if you look at my park rating, everything is 100% except the transport rating, and if you can pull up this management view, and here's transport, and this looks like it's the mid green yellow color. I can't really tell. Everywhere else is definitely green if we look across the whole map. So the only thing that would make sense to me is that this opening thing here is what's bringing the transport rating down. So basically, if I swapped spots with the capture team and put it maybe over here somewhere, and I put the monorail here, that would have improved my transport rating a little bit. Anyway, otherwise, you got most of my facility buildings are stuck here because there's not really enough room to put an enclosure over here anyway. And then our path turns right, and we have this big area where we have 3 enclosures. These 3 large enclosures should be more than enough to get to 2.5 stars. Basically, you have to start off with just Struthiomimus, and because that's all you get at first. And I researched and got the genome for Ceratosaurus first. So basically, I had a big Ceratosaurus enclosure right here, and I had like a Struthiomimus holding pen over here on the right. And I would just either tranquilize and move Struthiomimus, or I would incubate more Struthiomimus and release them into the Ceratosaurus enclosure. And you need to be really careful and stay on top of that because the Ceratosaurus will become uncomfortable and try to break out if there is not enough prey in the enclosure. So just Struthiomimus and Ceratosaurus isn't enough to get you to 2.5 stars though. So that's what this next enclosure in the back is for. And I believe I went after Carnotaurus next. That's much of this. Here we go. So I went after Carnotaurus next. That was my next big carnivore. And between tons of Ceratosaurus and tons of Carnotaurus and Struthiomimus to keep them happy and fed, I believe that got us to 2.5 stars, or else it was very close. I don't remember exactly. It may have required adding...
I like to think of myself as a behind-the-scenes hero. Money and logistics make the world go round, especially when we were talking about the park.
There's a chance that I needed to add in a couple of Majungasaurus to actually get to 2.5 stars. And so Majungasaurus and Carnotaurus actually can happily cohabitate with each other. So that's one of the kind of power couples, if you will, for this map. So anyway, that should definitely be enough to get you to 2.5, and from there it's a lot easier because there's not as many other penalties with this island compared to other ones. Like I had an easier time recruiting scientists. Whoa, what just happened? Did you see that? He just went flying.
Asset collection request received.
Anyway. Oh, vehicle destroyed. It happens. Then, of course, we get an injured dinosaur thanks to that. Ooh, not that one. Alright, so we'll be taking care of that in the background. So once I didn't need the Struthiomimus anymore, I had this one. Remember, this one was my like Struthiomimus holding pen. I think I put some Dracorex in here at some point too to get the species count up. But once I didn't need them anymore, I replaced them and made this into a Chinsausaurus. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, so I apologize. But I put these guys and Compies in here together, and since Compies count as a scavenger, they won't hunt them down. The Compies will panic occasionally, though. So as you can see, I've got 7 of these guys, and they all have about 500 rating each, so that's quite a bit. In this enclosure here, let me take care of the Ceratosaurus real quick.
Asset collection request.
Let's see, I have 13 Ceratosaurus, and they're about 200 each. In this enclosure back here, let's see, we've got 8 Majungasaurus at about 300 each. And I know I have even more Carnotaurus. 11 Carnotaurus. There was 12, and 1 just died from old age. And these guys are 300 each. So just this area of the map, and as you can see I've got amenities and hotels everywhere and viewing galleries. And I also made heavy use of the domes and the viewing logs, but we'll talk more about that later because that was actually maybe a mistake on this particular map.
En route to pick up the asset.
But we'll talk more about that later. This was enough to get me to around 3-ish stars, I would say. And I think I forgot to mention, but I have Coelophysis in with Ceratosaurus because they count as a scavenger. The only problem is there's so many Ceratosaurus that they panic a lot and their health goes low quite often, which is unfortunate how that seems to be very sensitive to having that issue happen. But anyway, if you notice back here, I had to make this kind of ugly hidden additional enclosure where I reintroduced some Struthiomimus into the park. And that was because I got to a point where I was basically at 4.8 stars for like an hour and a half, and I was just, no matter what I did with the amenities, I couldn't get to 5 stars. So I thought, okay, maybe if I add another species, that'll fix it. Put that Ceratosaurus back in there.
Picking up asset.
So yes, there's a hidden Struthiomimus enclosure, and if you're curious, they actually are visible thanks to the large hotels. So anyway, the monorail goes up here and drops off at the next kind of main section of the park. This is where...
That's a gold star for you, and another thing off my list for me.
That's where we have kind of our next main area. So we have another set of response teams and paleomedical facility, an innovation center tucked in the back. There's enough room back here that I probably could have made a couple of small enclosures here too if I really needed to. We got more hotels, a set of large amenities, and a set of medium amenities. And then we have 2 enclosures here, and one of them just is packed with Metriacanthosaurus. We have 13 of them. The enclosure is just big enough. There's technically not enough open space, but their comfort is still in the perfect zone. And these guys are 500 rating each. So if I click on this viewing dome, you can see we have 6,600 appeal from this enclosure here, which is pretty spectacular. There was another goat. And then next door we have a Suchomimus and Baryonyx combo enclosure because they can also live happily with each other. You can see right here. So I think a Baryonyx just died from old age, but we have 9 of them now. 300-ish rating each. The Suchomimus is an expensive dinosaur, but they have a lot of ratings, 639, and we have 9 of them in here. So almost 8,000 appeal just from this one enclosure alone. You can see they have a local dinosaur appeal. Lastly, we built a Jurassic tour that would take the guests up this neat little hill up here, and then we have a Eutyrannus and a Sinosauropteryx enclosure up here. Some of the DLC dinos. So let's see, we've got 10 Eutyrannus at 645 rating each. And they cohabitate with the Sinosauropteryx, which are these little guys here. Unfortunately, they also kind of tend to panic and get low health warnings because they panic around the Utyrannus. But they are 47-ish rating each, and we have 13 of them in here.
One of the most fetching features of the Utyrannus.
So, and we're relying on the Jurassic Tour up here to give us visibility and rating and all that. So that's the whole park in terms of the dinosaurs, and I kind of did a brief overview of how my facilities are laid out anyway. So we've got the attraction here and the Innovation Center. So now let me show you something that I'm not really sure what to make of here. We have this total appeal goal of 16,500, and we have way over that. So I'm not really sure if this number is just inaccurate or what. I feel like I'm missing something with how this works. I mean, we're just shy of the income per minute, but we've had several dinosaurs die off in the last few minutes, and as well as my first attempt at recording this. But we have 136% appeal. Aside from that minor ding to the transport rating, everything else is 100%. And the coverage is very close to 100%. There's a few that could perform better. Believe me when I say I spent like 2 hours trying to configure those darn amenities, and they keep kind of changing depending on which area of the park has the most guests. So my theory as to why the appeal number is so my point is I had way over the goal appeal, and everything else, like the comfort, security rating, and the hotel, the accommodation, and everything looked good, and I still wasn't at 5 stars. My theory is that I relied very heavily on these domes and the hotels for viewing. And then if you look here, so let's look at the hotels give luxury. They're desired by luxury guests for the viewing area, basically. And then if you look at attractions, the log and the dome, they are desired by the adventure guests, but they're also, the other 50% is nature guests. And if you remember, part of this challenge is that we don't have any nature guests. We only have adventure and general guests. So my theory is that because I relied so heavily on the domes, that I needed a higher appeal score, because the appeal that was supposed to go to the nature guests just falls off into the void or something. If that makes any sense. I could just be totally wrong, but it would make sense to me, that I suppose. So let's look at all these just for fun. The viewing galleries, which I also use, but they obviously don't have as good of viewing coverage as the domes. These attract general guests, so these are good. Viewing platforms, nature guests, no good. Zipline adventure, that would have been a good one to use, which I didn't use any. The gyro station has some adventure, but it's even more luxury, which we can't have.
I've got my hands full with the dinosaurs, so I'm leaving this next objective to you.
So talking more.
Facilities like new buildings, restaurants, shops, pit stops, and I don't mean that kind of race cars. Know what I mean?
So the tour is highly desired by adventure guests, so that's a good one. And then the aviary is general, and the lagoon is adventure. So these would have also been very good, but I obviously didn't research them, and I don't have any of those I don't have any flying reptiles or
Heading to collect the
aquatic reptiles in the park, so maybe that would have been the better decision to make. It does even tell you, if you look here, let me show you, if you look at ticket sales, the general guests like aviaries, which I didn't use any, and the adventure guests use lagoons, which I didn't build any, so maybe I should have prioritized those in the park. Maybe that would have given me an easier time. I don't know, let me know what you all think. Either way, I hope you all enjoyed this video and found it helpful. I'm curious if you all had any different experiences
en route to collect
with
the
this island, or I guess it's not an island technically, but you know what I mean. I'm so used to everything being one of the 5 deaths, which I kind of miss, to be honest. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.